Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy. How are you doing today? I know you're going to be going soon to your trip, and do you have a lot of things you got to just plan out, or is it all set? Or
no, we're still working on it. You know, as everybody knows, we tape this early so that we can go. But I spent some time earlier this morning even looking at the different tours we want to do and getting some things planned out. And then, kind of balancing that between we love to just be in a place and experience it. Not, like we like to do the tours and enjoy gaining the knowledge too, but truly just to walk and to see the people and engage in conversation with people that are there just in everyday life. And so leaving enough margin to just be and to witness and to watch and to be responsive to whatever random thing God puts in our path. So it's always trying to find that right balance in setting the trip up so that we get to see some of the sites, but also really just enjoy a pace of being and just seeing what God wants to do.
Right. That's the fun
So,
of it. We were in.
But we've got some fun excursions planned. We do.
When we were in the Caymans, it's kind of the same thing. Is that you want to just experience and just be around things, and so we were at our condo. Was right on the ocean there, and so there was an area where there were chairs and you could go snorkeling and stuff, and we just happened to be sitting next to a couple. Mm-hmm. Hey, how's it going? And it's great. Where are you from? Well, he was from Austria, and Linda's, of course, German, and her family's in Bavaria, Germany.
Right.
Say, from Austria, and well, here Linda's family's from Bavaria, like where? Well, I know that town, and here's where we live, and it was fun to have just dialogue about different perspectives and different life and what they
That's
thought.
One of my favorite things even, right?
Yeah,
That's one of the best parts of a trip.
Yeah, it really is. And then his wife was Cuban. And she says, well, I'm from Cuba. And, and what's that like? When did you come here? And why did you come here? And,
right.
What's it like there? And I said, hey, one of my clients, one of our best friends, Linda and mine, a woman, she was Cuban and came from Cuba, kind of similar age and stuff. And she was, expressing, and hey, this lady talked to us about this, and learned a lot about Cuba because from somebody that, knows there and still has family there. And so it really is fun when you just, Father, who do you want us to meet today? And, and share and do things and, and give a truth to. We were at this hotel doing this retreat, and we were while they were doing their exercise on Ezekiel, and this other people had been there all weekend, and we were out in the lobby. Rick and Nancy, Linda, and I were just talking about the exercise and God and all this stuff, and a guy walks over, and he says, "Hey, I want you to know something. I'm praying for you guys. I've heard what you've been saying, and I know what these guys are doing," because he could see them all over the lobby.
That's awesome.
He says, "I'm praying that they get to hear God's voice, and I just am so thrilled that you're, what are you doing, and how does this work, and it was just God, just connecting somebody, So
I love that.
It's really quite fun. Well, as we have been talking about prayer, and this is Paul's prayer in Ephesians. It's not pray this mechanically. It's understand the heart of God that wants to have you experience him with wisdom revelation, the life of God, that you understand it and keep going deeper, and let me relate to you, and that you may know the hope of your calling, which is the feast opportunity you have is spectacular. And I want to deliver this to you, and it's through eating the Word every day, and let me show you the beauty of what I have called for you, and I'll give it to you. And then we talked about the riches of the glory of His inheritance in the saints, that, again, this is why it's so important to write the Scripture out longhand and look at the words, because if you did, you'd notice, well, the inheritance isn't our inheritance, it's His inheritance.
It's His, right.
And we are His inheritance. And then you would think, okay, what does that mean? And you said it, is in order for anybody to get inheritance, what must happen?
Someone must die.
Yeah, you must die to receive it. And so we get inheritance because He died. He gets us when we die.
Right.
And what does that mean? And you see, this is understanding. Well, how do we die?
Got to die to self.
I got to die to self. When do we have to die to self?
Over and over.
All the time, because it's not permanent. So that He says, I would like to experience you as my inheritance all the time, which means I need you to die to self all the time. When you go back to self, which is Romans 8, you actually have put to death the life that I have, and you've gone the other direction. Now you're not my inheritance at the moment. And you've severed that relationship. And so come on back, and enjoy it. And He says, now when you do, now read again, Kathy, that we've set it up, these truths that we start to understand and pray for. Now read verse again, 19 through 23.
Sure. And what is the exceeding greatness of His power towards us who believe, according to the working of His mighty power, which He worked in Christ when He raised Him from the dead and seated Him at His right hand in the heavenly places, far above all principality and power and might and dominion and every name that is named, not only in this age, but also of that which is to come. And He put all things under His feet and gave Him to be head over all things to the church, which is His body, the fullness of Him who fills all in all.
Okay. So He says, as you're receiving wisdom, you're receiving revelation, you're receiving understanding, you are understanding the feast opportunity. You recognize that it's all based upon actually me, God speaking, receiving you as my inheritance, which means I can now give you back your inheritance. And then in verse 19, He says, so that you would understand what and experience what in verse 19?
Exceeding greatness of His power.
According to the working of His mighty power. So that, and it's all about faith. And He says, so I want you to experience the exceeding greatness of my power. In other words, my supernatural works. And He says, it's toward who?
It says, toward us who believe.
It's toward you personally on the path that I have designed for you. That you would experience this exceeding greatness of the power that I can give you. Okay. Now let's go to John 10:10. You know this one. The thief has come to kill, steal, and destroy, but I have come to do what?
To give you life abundantly.
Yeah, and give it to you super abundantly, exceedingly abundantly. So it's over the top life that God said, I've come to give you and to deliver to you, this supernatural power, because I can change things and make things happen. Okay, and He said, for you that believe. Okay, go to Hebrews chapter 11 and read verses 1 to 3.
11:1-3. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, and the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good testimony. By faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen are not made of things which are visible.
Yeah. So He says, the exceeding power for you that believe, by the way, that have faith, based on what? things not seen.
Right.
So it's not what you can visibly just see in the natural. It's really, and he says that in here, is based on what I'm going to speak to you.
Right.
Because you can be certain that what I say, I'll deliver it, and there'll be power associated with that if you receive it. And that's why faith is go to certainty that it's true. And he says in verse 3, he says, now let me help you understand the simplicity of this. How was all the material created?
I spoke it into being.
I spoke it out of my spiritual nature. It was created, what's called ex nihilo, out of nothing, only because I spoke it, because your circumstances are subordinate to my speaking power and changing it. I have that power. Why? Because everything was created that way.
Right.
It's all subordinate. It's all surrendered to the truth of my power, which is superior, preeminent. And all I got to do is speak it. And you have to get to certainty that you heard what I said. And then do you believe what I said? And then you'll experience the exceeding greatness of the power directed toward you and your circumstances, because it involves you. Okay, cool. Now he says, by the way, in verse 2, he said this all of this was obtained by the elders, a good report, by a good testimony. Okay, now this is interesting enough. He's talking about Joshua and Caleb. And we can go back to Numbers and remember God said after they crossed the Red Sea, I promise to take you to this new land and give you the abundance, the superabundance, and I'll deliver it to you. Yeah, there's an enemy there, but I'll defeat it. Let's go. They said, well, can we go check it out?
Right.
Yep. And they sent 12 spies. And by the way, they go see the abundance, by the way. They not only see the abundance, what do they carry back with them?
They carry back examples of it.
Yeah, and see, they take a grape, part of the grape vine, and see what because we're Americans and we think going to the grocery store and getting a clump of grapes. No, it was so abundant, it took 2 people to carry it back, and they brought it back and said, "Yeah, it's a land of milk and honey. These
I can testify that this is what this beautiful
land is.
Here it is.
It's fantastic. However, there's also giants there, and a nation that nobody else has been able to defeat, and we're nothing. There's no way we're going to win this.
Right.
So we're not going." And then they say, if only we had stayed in Egypt, which they were oppressed there, by the way.
Right.
And why did God bring us here? To kill us. Now, by the way, what did God tell him?
He told him he had this promised land for
I'm
them.
going to deliver to you. And by the way, everybody.
And he had seen them.
Yeah.
They had seen him do miraculous things time and time again.
We just went through one. Don't you remember the parting of the Red Sea and the dry ground? And
the supernatural is happening all around you guys. Pay attention.
I'm providing you, heat, and I'm providing you shade. Why did you bring us here to kill us? So they now distorted God's truth. Wouldn't it be better if we go do something else? And then I think we will, And so it says, and they basically said, we're refusing to be persuaded any further. We're not going. The scriptures, this is in Numbers, calls that a bad report. It's a bad report. They gave a bad report.
Right.
In the same chapter, it talks about Joshua and Caleb.
Right.
And what did they do? Yep.
They gave a good report.
It's all true. Everything they say is true. But God said. Because God said, we're willing to go. Let's go.
Right.
Why? Well, because God's power can deliver what he says. And we're willing to go because we believe that. not because of the circumstances, which are terrible, but God said.
Right.
And I know that he will deliver his extraordinary power toward us, because it's not going to be us defeating the enemy, it's going to be God. And so that's why Hebrews 11:2 says, and the elders, Joshua and Caleb, gave a good report.
Right.
Okay, now, what's the difference between a bad report and a good report?
The bad report saw it through their own eyes, and the good report said, but God.
But God.
Saw the same things, but knew what God's promises were and chose to stand on his truth.
Right. So he says, if you're starting to experience all that I want to do, you will be at a place, and by the way, remember, you have to be letting me experience you as my inheritance, because that means you're with me. Now I can deliver it to you. How do you do that? I got to be in the kingdom. He's the king, I'm not. In order for me to be in the kingdom, I have to surrender my will, die to self, and walk with him.
Right.
And he said, then you'll experience my supernatural power. And so a good report is you don't deny the facts, the truth. Yeah. Joshua and Caleb said, yeah, everything they said is right. Those guys are really big, and they've never been defeated. And if we were trying to do this by ourselves, there's no way we would win. But God. But what God said. Since God said, let's go.
Right.
And I believe it. Why? Well, because God said it. And his power is superior to the circumstances. Okay, now think of the implication of that. He says, as you're praying for wisdom, you're praying for revelation, you're praying for understanding, you're eating at the feast table, receiving my word, and you have trouble, you have circumstances, you have difficulty, adversity, something's happening, you can't see a way through it, you can't see an answer to it. What would be your question to me? Father, what have you got to say about this?
Right.
See, it's not even what are you going to do about this?
Right.
Okay, why? Well, because his word is superior to everything. And I got to hear what he has to say. And instead of me saying, well, okay, I got a plan, would you bless my plan? No. Or I guess I'm stuck and it's going to be miserable, or I'm never going to get through this, or I'll never get around this, or I guess I got to live with it. And God says, well, no, because I am going to direct my supernatural over-the-top power toward you personally.
Right. I want to just highlight, because we toss that question around. I mean, we talk about it a lot, but we do toss that question around so often on here because it's just common. It's common vernacular in our world now. Is God, what do you have to say about this? But what you just explained there takes that so much deeper than I think sometimes we even talk about. It's not even just asking him, hey, what do you want to tell me?
Right.
It's what are you declaring over this? Because your spoken word changes my circumstances.
That's right.
Your spoken word created the world. So when we're saying, God, what do you want to say about this? We're really saying, God, where are you showing up with your power and dominion and changing what is going on?
Yeah.
And that is so much richer. I think sometimes we could just get so used to saying it that we can miss communicating the power of what does he have to say about it really means, right?
Yeah, because we can even, in a sense, we could even kind of process that in the way we see it. You know, like, hey, what do you got to say about that? And probably he's saying, yeah, that's too bad.
Right.
No, it is. It's what are you speaking with authority? Because he says,
yes,
I'm going to direct. And that's why the word is really specific toward into
this particular circumstance,
into your specific stuff, the supernatural, exceeding abundant life power. Why? Because I can make things different.
Yeah.
Then you're just naturally maneuvering around it. So it's not when we think of wisdom,
it's not an answer. It is a declaration
Yeah.
of power.
Yes. Yeah. And see, when we think of wisdom, we tend to think, will help me to do this better and maneuver it better, manage it better. No. Wisdom is going to put you in the right spot for me, God speaking, to declare a word to change things, and you'll experience that supernatural power. And he said, by the way, that's the power that raised Christ from the dead.
Right.
And by the way, Christ is where? Superior to everything, including even the demonic power. So that's not going to prevent anything either. And he's the head of the church, and you are to be the fullness of that expression. What? Experiencing that fantastic life that he has. So he says, in your prayer life, he said, keep elevating it. This is why Paul writes this. We'll see this again in chapter 3 when we get into that next, is that keep elevating your kind of view of it all. It's not, well, I hope I do better at this, or I hope I manage it better, or probably ain't going to get through this one. It's, you keep dialoguing with me, processing with me, and let me speak the supernatural power that you are going to be called to believe it. And by the way, Romans 12:1-2 says what? I'm the author and finisher of faith.
Right.
So you don't even have to have faith. You just have to be receiving it. I'll get you there. Don't worry. What? Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me. And it'll translate into supernatural stuff. And as you know, in your life, and you've experienced it many, many times, as Linda and I have, when you experience God's supernatural, what happens to you?
Oh, our faith is built, and we can't help but testify and magnify.
Yeah.
You know.
And what do you think of when the next thing comes?
Then we want to know what he has to say on that too, and we're excited to see what he's going to do.
Yeah.
That's kind of where the adventure really begins, because you sit in anticipation that he is an active participant in your life.
Right.
You know.
And see, it's God at work in real stuff. I'll give you an example. Jake Beckel and I are, we have a company we started a couple years ago called Compound Pharmacy, which is not the retail pharmacies where you process pills. It's rather you actually physically make in your own location unique formulations for people that need unique things. Right. And it's not as big as the big pharma, but it's still pretty big, because there's a whole population that the pill doesn't work for very well. So we have to tweak it a little bit. So we're called Compound Pharmacy. And we have an investor, and we've been buying them and operating them and integrating them. A month ago, I got I got a notice that a certain pharmacy went under bankrupt. Well, I didn't really know anything about it, so I said, well, I'll call and just see if they're in bankruptcy. Maybe we could buy them or buy something of them, and so I'll check it out. So I start calling and try to locate them and find them, and I call and no response, call and no response, call and no response. And after a couple of weeks of that, it's like, I guess it ain't gonna happen. And it doesn't matter to me. And God said, if I keep going, there's more to this. You be a little bit more persistent. Keep calling.
Right.
Okay. So I call him and no response. Finally, the CEO of that company calls. And I said, hey, I heard you went bankrupt. And he said, yeah. He said, actually, in 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, and of course, I guess it's more than a month now, we're going to be in front of the bankruptcy judge. He's going to decide who wins the bid. If you want to make a bid, here's the information. It's called the data room. Go look at the data room,
right,
and make a bid. Okay. So we look at the data room and find out it's 44 locations, but they're retail pharmacy, not compounding, but they have one compound pharmacy.
Okay.
And so, well, we could be interested in that one. We aren't interested in retail because that's not who we are. So we call them back, say we're not going to bid, but we would be interested in the compound pharmacy. So when you know the winner, let me know, and then we'll see if we can get in contact with them. He said, yeah, that's fine. So the time passes. I kind of forgot about it. God reminded me, hey, you didn't hear from that guy. Give him a call. So I call him up. hey, what happened? He said, well, Walgreens won. They won the bid. And because, they're big, they're going to probably just shut the locations down and take over their operation. I said, well, who can I talk to at Walgreens? He said, well, here's the guy. Call this guy. Okay. So I call the guy, get him on the phone, and say, hey, we'd like to talk to you. Set up a meeting, Jake and I'd like to talk to you. And okay, great. And we set it up. We had a Zoom call. And first of all, he says, how's it going? I said, who are you? Where are you located? I'm a senior guy at Walgreens. I'm in Chicago at Deerfield, Illinois. And I said, interesting enough, your office is the same place where I began my career with Baxter Laboratories, in the same building. I said, are you sitting in my office? And he laughed. And, he said, well, that's interesting. He said, so tell me about your career. Baxter and American Hospital and acquisitions and healthcare and all this stuff. And, that's interesting. And then Jake says, hey, did you know so-and-so? He said, yeah, I worked for him. And Jake's friend was his fraternity brother, and he was the former CEO of Walgreens, a pharmacist. And he says, man, I really loved working for that guy. And tell me about him, and your experience with him. And so Jake did. So we had a very cordial, immediate connectivity of just things that were interesting. And so he said, well, who are you people? And so we tell him. And he says, well, the deal that we just did, I know you're interested in this compound. It's moving so fast in terms of closing it that I won't be able to separate that out and have you buy that because everything's in motion and it would take too much effort to have you pull that out. He said, Walgreens has compound operations all over the country. And he says, we're lousy at it.
Interesting.
He said, we're great at retail, but we're lousy at this. And there's lots of compliance issues, as you guys know. And you know what? Why don't we get together and see about doing some kind of a long-term partnership where either you provide stuff to us or buy some of our operations or, whatever. I think we can do business together. It's like,
and this
whoa.
is that's big right there.
Yeah, I mean, for them, it's nothing, but for us,
for y'all,
it's
yes.
gigantic, and God says, let me supernaturally connect you with Walgreens that we would have never even thought about. We wouldn't even say there's no way we're going to get to them at all.
Even think about going after that, right?
And just boom, boom, boom. God says, here, do you see that supernatural thing I just did directed toward you in your particular situation because you're eating at the table and you've surrendered your will and you're my inheritance. And because you're my inheritance, I can talk to you and now I can speak authority and moving. I can make things happen because it's all directed toward you. So that the part of the purpose of prayer isn't just to say, isn't that nice? It's, what authority do you want to bring into my circumstances that is directed toward me, and the supernatural, superabundant, fantastic power is going to be available to me. What privilege is that?
That's amazing.
So you're not just talking. You're not just talking to another human. You're talking to the God of the universe, who says, "Not only am I care about you and love you, I can do things that you can't do."
Absolutely.
So
so encouraging.
We'll pick this up. Yeah, we'll pick this up next time, and we'll get into chapter 3, where Paul takes another prayer and kind of gives another element to this that will understand more of the truth of what prayer is all about. So.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for joining us, everyone. I hope you found today encouraging and just began to grasp a little more of what it is that God has for each and every one of us as we walk with Him day by day and surrender and learn to pray and just have that relationship with Him.
Amen.
So thanks so much and have a great day.
Yep. And if you got questions, send them in. We'd love to answer them, and hope you have a good day. See you soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.